Coming up today on This Is True Really News,
Yes.
we will delve into teachers.
We're delving?
It'll be delving.
Oh, I haven't delved in a while. I have to straighten up here.
If you like stories about teachers, and I know
Full of
teachers
muscle.
mostly do,
Well, depends on the story.
you should, let's see, lock, load, and
No.
should dangle and
No.
participle.
Keep going.
You should dial, like, subscribe, and follow This Is True Really News.
I knew you'd get there.
Once I got the first one, it was pretty easy. The others just
Yeah.
fell into line. And if you have stories you think we'd be interested in or you'd like us to be interested in, send them to
TITR@netradio.network because we're not going through that again.
This is True, Really News with Scott Combs and Tony Vercanis. All the news you're about to hear is true,
Really?
as far as you know.
So why did the chicken cross the road?
because he was stapled to the punk rocker's
No one
cheek.
knows. It's a... Well, that could be. No one knows it's a dumbass joke thing.
Right.
Why did 2,500 sheep cross the road? Boise, Idaho, the grass was apparently greener on the other side.
Okay.
It is not unusual to see ranchers moving a rather bleeding, that's with a T, bleeding herd of sheep up to a higher elevation this time of year, but the sight of 2,500 woolly beasts trotting across a highway earlier this week brought a crowd of about 300 people to, I don't know what, stare?
Yeah, what are you going to do?
You can hug one, but just slide right off. It was the largest turnout that Steve Stubner, a spokesman for the Idaho Rangeland Resources Commission, has seen in 15 years. But yeah, it's a novelty. Maybe they've never seen anything like that before, but it's pretty typical in Idaho. When you're out in rural parts in the spring and summer or fall, you could run into cattle drives or sheep drives.
We did all of that in Europe all the time. I mean, it seemed like wherever we went. In fact, the shepherds used to come through our backyard.
They followed you.
Hey, let's get the stupid kid who wants to ride the ram.
Let's follow the bozos.
They told me not to grab his horns, and when I did, he threw me out.
Didn't like that much?
No.
So apparently you shouldn't have grabbed the horns.
That's exactly, and that's what they
So
told
then
me.
you
Not to.
were...
I was. Were you doing this whole Scott's wrong thing again?
forever and ever.
You did.
Curious onlookers lined up the road as the animals sheepishly entered the highway, guided by ranchers and steered by sheepdogs. They traveled. See, it could be any old dog if he's steering sheep. It's a sheepdog, I guess.
Yeah, right.
They traveled up the road a ways, their little fluffy white herd obscuring the yellow painted center line amid a chorus of baas, and they had to lead you with a jangling bell so the other sheep wouldn't get lost.
Yeah.
Now they'll journey through these sagebrush-dotted foothills for a few weeks to their summer home at Boise National Forest.
Well,
I don't know, that'd be kind of cool to see once.
yeah, I've seen it a bunch.
And if you haven't, well, if you want to see it, the Ovine Spectacle will return when the sheep are brought back down again in the fall. Scott,
Did you ever have any good teachers?
no. One curly-haired one.
She didn't say much.
Not really. No.
Lately, I've been noticing, we got to thank all teachers. All teachers are wonderful. Believe teachers. Yada, 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 yada.
I like
yada.
teachers for the most part.
I like people for the most part, but not all of them are good.
Well, I don't like all of them.
There are some. I can tell you what. Most of the teachers I've had were thoroughly middling. The overwhelming majority, and the ones that stood out because of their humanity, their kindness, and they got more out of me than the teachers who berated me.
I had none, so I got it all.
Yeah, lucky you. So I'm
joke.
I'm a little tired of all these good teachers. Let's talk a little bit about some rotten teachers, shall we? Because I had a few of them too.
What do you think?
Yeah.
No, I mostly had average teachers.
Yeah, most
A
overwhelming.
couple of very good ones.
Yeah, there were a handful of less than a handful of really good ones. And then the rest, probably less than a handful of really bad ones.
I don't think I had a really bad one. I had some who were.
I've had a couple. They were just never you mind.
I'm never minding you.
In 8th grade, we had to write a short
We're
story.
going to do that sheep thing all day, aren't we?
I think so.
Whenever you say you.
All 6 days. You. In 8th grade, we had to write a short story from the perspective of someone who survived a Civil War raid. Unbeknownst to my teachers, I was obsessed with historical fiction, was a darn good writer to boot.
Uh-oh.
Turned mine in happily because my grade needed help. And I was so sure this would turn it around. I thoroughly researched the topic, worked tirelessly, and handed it in. 3 days later, the teacher gets up and says, "Good job, everyone," but then made a huge point about how someone plagiarized and someone wouldn't be getting theirs back, and how that person must immediately come to her desk so they can go to the office. Sure enough, I was the one. The teacher made a little show about stopping beside my desk with empty hands and shaking her head sadly at me. Everyone was whispering and giggling, and I was about to cry. We tracked down the librarian who assigned this, and I had to wait in the hall all puffy-faced. She came out of class and started in on me in the hall about how I was a cheater. No one listened to my protests, so we went to the office where the principal was waiting with an "I'm disappointed in you" look. I was a mess from crying, but I managed to choke out, "What proof?" in the middle of his talk about suspension. He looked at the librarian and my history teacher, who looked at each other. Well, the librarian said she hadn't found it specifically yet. Principal asked what she meant by specifically. Apparently, she'd graded mine last of 54 and decided that because it was 4 times as long and better written than the others, I must have cheated.
Really?
They shifted around for a minute, then sent me to PE without so much as an apology.
See, all I would have had to do when I got home
Yep.
was mention that to my little 5-foot-tall mom. And hell would have rained down on them like they had never seen.
Oh, had that happen in 3rd grade. It took my dad to deal with it, though.
Different kind of hell raining down on them.
Oh, boy. I could hear him barking at the principal and my teacher, who was very mean. And not just to me, to a lot of kids.
And you were 2 blocks away.
And I was actually in Fort Leavenworth. They had sent me to prison.
It's, well, you know, when you commit the crime, you got to do the time.
Yeah, you're up.
14-year-olds in Wisconsin could soon serve alcohol to seated customers in bars and restaurants under a bill circulated for co-sponsors Monday, put it out by a pair of Republican state lawmakers.
Well,
I know. Can you imagine the rage? Under current law, you have to be 18 and above to serve alcohol to customers in Wisconsin.
Yeah.
That bill would simply broaden it would add 14, 15, 16, and 17 to that bunch, and they could only serve seated customers, not drinkers, at the bar.
Okay.
So you got to be at the tables, right? Okay.
Helps it makes things more efficient.
See, the bill sponsors, Senator Rob Staffshold of New Richmond and Chance Green of Grandview, said in a memo that was circulated when they were looking for the co-sponsors, the current age limit causes workforce issues due to an establishment's underage employees only being able to do part of their job. Keep in mind, these would be youngsters who want to work.
Yep.
Might have to explain that to some adults, what want to work means, but you get the idea. They said their idea creates a rather simple, elegant solution to the state's workforce shortage problems in the food and beverage industry. The bill requires the licensed operators of the bar or restaurant be on the premises and supervising. Honestly, if you owned a bar or restaurant, there is hardly never a time the owner is not there, which is
right.
Why really you do not want to own a bar or a restaurant. And I can hardly wait for the ugly to arrive, because it's going to. And then I can look and say, so wait, children younger than 14 can make decisions on surgery for themselves, but they can't carry a glass of beer to a table.
Well, never mind that you're in Wisconsin. How many times has their dad or mom gone, kid, go to the fridge and get me a beer?
And they're going to pick on Wisconsin because they had that weird law where you could drink with your family at 15.
Who cares?
You would have a beer at 15, even in
Right.
public.
Yeah. It was kind of like that in Germany. My folks
don't
used to
care.
give us sips. Yeah.
But that's back when parents were responsible for their children.
And parents are
And-
no longer responsible.
Well, no, now children run the house.
Yeah.
There's a reason we call them kids, because they're not adults yet.
We're out of the mouths of newspapers.
Babes. Oh,
Out of the mouths of newspapers.
that's not as much fun. You get ink on your mouth.
Used tombstone. Perfect for someone named Homer Hendel Bergen Heinzel. One only.
Thank God. Think of the rush. You know, if you put that up for auction, you'd be wealthy.
One only. It's just, you mean Junior didn't go to? Stolen car found.
Then you'd have to put Junior on it.
Yeah.
Or 2.
Stolen car found. A stolen vehicle was recovered at the corner of Linden Street and Hillside Boulevard Thursday. The car was intact except for a missing vinyl top, front and rear seats, airbags, dashboard, transmission, engine, and both license plates. But except
So-
for that,
It was stripped, is what you're saying. Stripped is what you mean by intact.
yes.
All right, then.
And those people picked on me for how I wrote.
Yes, they did.
Newspaper people never like the way I write. Strom.
No, because they have a very strict code, and I never figured it out.
Yeah, me either.
2 years at St. Cloud State, never figured it out.
I even went to journalism school for a bit.
That's where I was, went to St. Cloud State, man.
And it makes no sense.
No,
Finally, Grand Rapids, Michigan. A man who spent 13 years in prison for a death authorities had attributed to a blow from a whiskey bottle has been freed after new evidence suggested the victim was hit
Oh, no.
by a motorhome. How big was that whiskey bottle?
How big? I mean, really? I had an inflatable whiskey bottle that was like 5 feet tall. It was some promo thing my dad got. That would, even that, if it were a real bottle, would not mimic a mobile home. I'm pretty sure.
No.
This is true, really news. Send email to TITR@netradio.network.